Second to last line, 47b. Taner Rabbanan Shakat Shnei Kvasim al Arba Chalos Moshe Steinman Umei Nifan. So we know that on Shavuos, you bring 2 lambs, and you also bring 2 of the special breads. What if you slaughtered 2 of the lambs on 4 breads instead of 2? So now only 2 of them are going to have the higher level of sanctity. 2 of them are not. So the 2 remaining are going to be redeemed. You'll be able to be posed. Remember, there's 2 kinds of sanctity. One is called Kedushas Haguf. It's the thing itself has innate sanctity. And the other one is called Kedushas Damim. It's just its monetary value is going to go to the temple. The thing with everyone's calling their friends. What's going on? Tell your Bobby you say hi. What's going on? So the ones that have monetary sanctity are able to be redeemed. So you have 4 breads. 2 of them, once the lambs are slaughtered, have a higher level of sanctity, cannot be redeemed. So you take 2 of them and you wave them. The other 2 are going to be redeemed. So that's what the Brisa says. Now, Amruhu Rabbanan Kamed Rav Chisda. The rabbi said over this teaching to Rav Chisda, and his response was, Ha delo kirebi. Now, we had a debate yesterday, Rebbe and Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon. Their debate was, at what point do the breads become sanctified? When you slaughter it or when you throw the blood up? So we're saying now that it can't be Rebbe, because if it's the opinion of Rebbe that once you slaughter it, the breads become holy, the Rebbe, cave on the Amr, Shchita Mikatsha, since he says that slaughtering sanctifies the bread, so now you're stuck. So there's 2 wavings you do, one beforehand. So it sounds like all 4 breads are inside. And now you slaughtered, and now you have to know what to do. You have to pick 2 of the breads and redeem them. So it sounds like Breira, but I didn't say we were talking about it, but that concept, yeah. So the park, which kid to choose? Breira? Yeah, I get to choose. The park lehu heicha. Exactly should you redeem the other 2 breads? Now, out of the 4 that are here, you don't know which ones are sanctified, which ones are not. So now what do you do? 2 of them are holy, 2 of them are not. So what do you do? So maybe you'll say, take the breads outside. Well, that you can't do. Since it says that they have to remain in front of Hashem in the inner part of the altar, inside the temple, so removing them will be an invalidation. So you can't take all 4 of them outside, because 2 of them that are holy can't go outside. It's going to be invalid. So what do you want to say? Redeem it right here, right now, inside. Igavoi, what's the problem though? Once you redeem the 2 that are not holy, as holy, onto coins, now they're just mundane. You remove their sanctity, put it on coins at home, and now you remove the sanctity from 2 of the breads. So then now what happens? Hama'ayil chulin liazara. You're bringing in mundane things into the courtyard. You can't do that either. You can't bring your pizza into the courtyard, even if Alan gave it to you with love. Doesn't matter. You still can't bring it to the courtyard. So now the Gemara is making an assumption, interesting assumption. The prohibition of bringing in mundane things into the courtyard applies even if when you brought it in, it was holy, and now you're redeeming it. And by default, that's still right now considered a prohibition of mundane things being brought into the sanctuary, even though you didn't bring it in. You just redeemed it, and now by default, it becomes mundane. So that was Rav Chisda's response. This can't be like Rebbe, because according to Rebbe, once you slaughter, so now 2 of them are holy, and now you're stuck in this predicament. So that's what the rabbis told Rav Chisda. Amar lehu Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda responded to them, not so fast. Liolam kirebi. You could hold like Rebbe. Uparik lehu gavai. And you could redeem them outside. Sorry, inside. Thank you. Uparklu gavai. It's poor. Everything's backwards, right? So uparklu gavai. So I was thinking early just for that, but I decided not to. So uparklu gavai. So v'chulen memela kahavim. So you redeem it inside, and what were you worried about? That once you redeem it, you remove the sanctity, and now it's mundane, and you have mundane things in a courtyard. Okay, but you didn't bring it in. It became mundane by default. So that's not a prohibition of bringing something mundane into the courtyard. So that's interesting back and forth. Is that a problem or not? So that was Rav Chista's response. Amar le Ravina. Ravina says to Rav Ashi, I v'hatanya, the Brisa says, Kishu podan, ein podan ela b'chutz. We have a Brisa that requires redeeming it outside, presumably because if you redeem it in something inside, it's going to lose its sanctity, and that's like bringing something mundane into the courtyard. That's not okay. So the Brisa says you can't redeem inside; you got to redeem outside. So, based on that Brisa, we say that statement earlier was Havade Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon. It has to be the opinion of Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon, because once again, the Rebbe, if it's the opinion of Rabbi Ipsul, so we can take 4 breads out. Well, 2 of them are holy, and now why are they holy? Because you slaughtered. Because slaughtered creates the holiness, and then you're going to ruin it. So therefore, the opinion that holds you can take things outside and redeem it must hold that it doesn't have a higher level of sanctity. Why does that opinion hold it does not have a higher level of sanctity? Because all you did was slaughter it and not apply the blood. According to Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Shimon, applying the blood gives the bread a higher level of sanctity. Until you did that, it has a lower level of sanctity. As long as it has a lower level of sanctity, you can bring it outside and redeem it. Okay, so Amar le Rav Acha Breda Rava. So Rav Acha, the son of Rava, said to Rav Ashi, Lema tahave tiyufta de Rabbi Yochanan. Let this all be a rebuttal on what Rabbi Yochanan said. The Nehad Itmar from the following statement. Toda sheshachta al shmonacha on shmonim chalos. So you flew overseas or were let out of prison, and now you want to thank Hashem, so you bring a toda, a thanks offering. With that comes 40 breads. You decide to buy one, get one free at Safeway, and you bought 80 breads. So now you slaughtered your toda offering on 80 breads. So aside from the fact that your wife's going to kill you, no. So what do you do with 80 breads now? So we don't have that many friends. There's a lot of bread pudding, yeah. So maybe take some for sourdough, give it to Donna. A lot of good options here. Okay. But either way, you have now on 80 breads. So now only 40 of them are required to bring with a toda. So what happens? Chizkiya Amar, Chizkiya says, Kitchuar by mitoch shmonim. Out of the 80 you slaughtered, out of the 80, you didn't slaughter 80. Out of the offering you slaughtered, instead of 80 become only 40 become holy, not 80, because that's what the Torah says. But Rabbi Yochanan, though, Amar lo kitchu arbayim mitoch shmonim. Rabbi Yochanan said, no, 40 are not sanctified from the 80. So what does he hold? He holds that 0 are sanctified, no?
Yes, is none.
None. Oh, so we're saying you have 4 breads for your 2 lambs on Shavuos, and 2 out of 4 are sanctified. But you see, Rabbi Yochanan says, when you do the same thing by a toda, and you slaughter the toda on 80 breads, 0 are sanctified. So we see it's a rebuttal against Rabbi Yochanan. So what do we say? Not so fast. Didn't we teach on the teaching of Rabbi Yochanan? Amar Rabbi Zera hakol modim heichen de Amar liktish arba mitoch shmonim de kachu hachanami de Amar liktish tarti mitoch arba. Rabbi Yochanan will agree that if you specifically stated, I want 40 out of the 80 to be sanctified, that'll work. I guess then you choose your 40. So in our case also, it doesn't have to be a rebuttal against Rabbi Yochanan. You could say that when you have 2 lambs being slaughtered and you have 4 breads, you say, I want 2 of the breads to become holy, and therefore it's not a rebuttal on Rabbi Yochanan. Tani Rabbi Chanina Tirta. So Rabbi Chanina from the place called Tirta, Kamei de Rabbi Yochanan, said in front of Rabbi Yochanan the following: Shachat arba'a kvasim al shtei chalos. So now you go the other way. You got overexcited about the laws of shchita, so you want to try it on Shavuos. So what'd you do? You did, yeah, like Rabbi Miller, exactly. So you took 4 lambs instead of 2. So you slaughtered 4 lambs on 2 breads. So shachat arba kvasim al shtei chalos. Moshech shnayim mehen v'zorek daman shelo l'shman. So now what do? You slaughtered 4 lambs on 2 breads. So take 2 of the lambs, moshech shnayim mehen, literally pull, drag. Take 2 of the lambs, v'zorek daman shelo l'shman, and throw the blood, apply the blood for the wrong reasons. Meaning not for Shavuot, for something else. Why? If you don't do that, so then you're going to get stuck. Why? Meaning, if you take the first 2 and you apply the blood properly, then the other 2 are out the window. They're no good anymore. So Rashi brings, like we said yesterday, you have something which is totally fit to be brought for Shavuos, and then it gets pushed away. Why? Because out of the 4, only 2 are Shavuos lambs. If the first 2 you bring properly, then the other 2 were one-time fit, and now they're no longer fit. Once you were fit to be brought for Shavuos, and now you're no longer fit, you can't even apply the blood, and it won't work at all. It's only if you are, right now you have 4 lambs. So 2 of them are not Shavuos lambs. They could be, but they can't be if there's 4 of them. So 2 of them, what you do is you apply that blood shelo lishma for the wrong reasons, and that will salvage your other 2 lambs. Your other 2 lambs won't be disqualified. But if you apply the blood properly for 2 of the lambs, then the other 2 are going to be disqualified because they're no longer fit to be brought. So yeah, or another version Rashi brings is that if you do all 4 for the right reasons, so then 2 are for sure disqualified because it just doesn't work. So either way, the advice is, so you shouldn't lose out, apply the blood for 2 of them improperly. It'll become a shlomim, and then the other 2 are good to go. So now we get to an interesting concept that Amar lo Rabbi Yochanan v'chi omrim lo la'adam amud v'chata b'shvil shetiskeh. So the Gemara assumes that switching sanctity from a Shavuos offering to something else is a avera, is a sin. So says Rabbi Yochanan, we find such a thing. You get up and sin in one area to salvage yourself in another area. So it's interesting. There's almost a parallel language of a Gemara in Shabbos about a person, you sin by taking something out of the oven on Shabbos for your friend to prevent him from violating the prohibition of cooking. Your friend put something into the oven. He put, I think it's bread on the side of the oven. You to take the bread out is a minor avera. So the Gemara there talks about you're doing a minor avera to save your friend from. Can you do that? So it's very interesting. It's almost a parallel case. So now, so here also you're doing something improper by switching sanctity on 2 of the lambs, what should be a Shavuos lamb, to something else, to a shlomim, in order to salvage the other 2. So that was the advice given from Rabbi Chanina, and he said this over to Rabbi Yochanan, and Rabbi Yochanan says, no way. Do we? No, he didn't say no way, but he says, do we do such a thing that you can do this prohibition to merit yourself in another area? So now we're going to go through a bunch of cases to see if we say it or we don't say it. So, v'hatnan. Let's look at another case. A varei chata, so the limbs of the chatas that are going to be put up on the altar. However, the guy went and shenis arvu be'evari ola. He mixed up the limbs. He didn't have everything, designated. So he mixed up the chatas limbs that are going to go onto the altar with the ola limbs. So now what do? So by the chatas, the chatas limbs are going to be eaten by the kohanim. The chatas parts are going to be eaten by the kohanim. Ola is always fully consumed, and now they're mixed together. What advice do we have for you? So, other than firing you from your organizing job, so it says chatas is arvu be'evari ola. Rabbi Eliezer Omer yitnu lamala v'roani as basar chatas lamala kilu he eitzim think we had this at one point earlier. Rabbi Eliezer holds, no problem. Put your the limbs of the chatas that were mixed together. You can put it on top of the altar, and we're not going to view it as a sacrifice. Rather, we'll view it as fuel for the altar, and that's it. We use it as fuel. Okay, fine. That's not a problem. The chachamim omrim, no. To ubar tzuras, I have to wait till it loses its form, and then v'yatzu lebeisa sreifa, and then bring it out to be burnt. So says the Gemara on the chachamim's opinion. Why? Amai lema amud v'chata b'shvil shetiske. Why don't you get up and sin in order to save the other limbs? How would that look? Amud v'chata b'chatos b'shvil shetiske b'chatos amrinan. Amud v'chata b'chatos b'shvil shetiske ba'ola lo amrinan. So what would the advice over here be? The advice here would be, why don't you bring this whole thing up, even the chatas parts, and offer them up on the altar as an ola. Really, they're supposed to be eaten by the kohanim, but you're going to offer it up as an ola, and they'll be fully consumed. So meaning, why don't you have a whole bunch of limbs over here. So the advice was they all have to spoil, and then they get burnt. Why? Part of them are chatas, and part of them are ola. Take the whole bunch, put it on the altar, and what's going to happen? You're losing out on your chatas. The kohanim can't eat it. Okay, but you salvaged all the ola parts that are supposed to be consumed on the altar. So why don't we say that? That the Gemara says no. You could do that for a chatas, but from a chatas to ola, that you can't do. If you have one, if you have like in our case, for instance, you have by our lambs on Shavuos, so that's. You're taking the lambs and you're going to offer them up for the wrong reasons, and you're going to gain from that. But to go from a chatas to an ola, so that we're not going to do. So even though we say that sometimes you could do it, but from a chatas to an ola, that we're not going to do. Why not? Why not?
It's similar.
I don't know. So there's a general question over here. What is the necessity of preserving? Why such a big deal to preserve the offering? So I was trying to figure it out, but there's a line here that Tosfos mentions like takanas korban for the fixing or the saving of that sacrifice. So when you have a lamb, let's say by our case of Shavuos, so you want to salvage this lamb. So this lamb, switch it to a shlamim. In our case, you're not salvaging the chatas, you're salvaging another offering. So that's like you're giving up. So who says that works? All we found is to salvage this animal for itself. This animal, which is bound to be wasted, switch it to a shlamim, like on Shavuos, and it'll be good. That we found, but then you're at least saving this sacrifice. Here you have a chatas and an ola. It's two different things. Who said you could, for the sake of another sacrifice, you could do an aveira on this sacrifice? That's like a bigger jump, something like that. So says the Gemara, really ubechada milsa mi amrinan. In one area, do we really say that you could do an aveira even in one area? But Hatanya says the brisa kifsei atzeres. We have a brisa that says that the lambs of Shavuos, shishachtan shlo lishman, you already slaughtered it for the wrong reasons. Or shishachtan bein lifnei, you slaughtered it on Purim, or bein la'achazon, you slaughtered it after Shavuos. So what do? Hadam yizruk, throw the blood up, va'basar yochal, and you can eat the meat. However, v'im haisa Shabbos, if it's Shabbos and it's already been slaughtered, and now you want to know, can I or can I not apply the blood onto the altar? Im haisa Shabbos lo yizruk. Don't do it, ideally. If you did it, you didn't listen, and you did it anyways, so then you're right. It'll work. It'll work to allow you that Motzi Shabbos, you can offer the fats of the animal up on the altar. Now, why can't you ideally go and apply the blood on Shabbos? Amai, lema, amud chata b'shosha tiska. So why don't you just say, why ideally can't you go apply the blood? What's the problem? The problem is that you have a Shavuos offering that's now was slaughtered with the wrong intention. So why don't you go right now and just put the blood up, and it'll just become a shlomim offering, a peace offering. Why do you have to wait till after Shabbos to do it? Just do it now. So on that, the Gemara says, so Amud chata b'Shabbos k'dei shetiske b'Shabbos amrina. Amud chata b'Shabbos k'dei shetiske b'chol lo amrina. Says the Gemara, if we were able to benefit from this on Shabbos itself, then you'd be allowed to do it. But since we're only applying the blood onto the altar in order to burn the limbs and the fats after Shabbos, that we don't do.
You remember where the
on a weekday, yeah.
Oh, I found it.
Charles, you want to mute yourself? One second. Do I have power to mute somebody? It's more power than like any rabbi ever gets. I don't know. Can't do it. Okay. So fine. Either way. So that's that. Now says the Gemara the other way. Ubetarti mili lo amrin. When there's two things, two different sacrifices, we don't say that you could sin with one to salvage the other. Ubetarti mili lo amrinan. But it says v'hatnan chavis shel truma. You have a barrel of truma. Now truma, special requirement, you got to preserve it in its sanctity. I think with shmartim as trumasi, you got to safeguard the truma. You cannot contaminate it. So you have a barrel of truma on top, and now it broke. So chavish shel truma ben neshis begat hal yona, and the higher of that, ubetachtona chulin, and the one under it is a whole vat of mundane wine. So the second that truma is going to go in, you're going to ruin the truma now. So now what do? Ubetachtona chulin tmein. So Rebbe Eliezer.
I've got to be there at 7. Yeah, 7, yeah.
Charles.
That's what time it is.
Charles.
Right now. 7:30.
Charles.
Sorry, just muted.
How do you mute somebody? Oh, amazing. Okay. Not that we don't love your voice, just yeah. Okay. So here we go. So the truma barrel got broken, and what happens? The bottom is chulin. So what do? So Moda Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, they both agree. Shim yochol lahatil mimenu revius b'tahara yatzel. So you got to run out, go back home, and get a pure vessel, one that's not contaminated at all. In the meantime, while you're there busy trying to find through your garage some kind of pure vessel that hasn't been touched, you got for your wedding, never been used, whatever it is, the truma is just pouring away, wasting away. So what do? Yatzil, you should go, and our precedence is salvage at least a revius of truma in its purity at the expense of the rest of the truma. Okay, so that's im yochol hatzamenu revius b'tahara yatzil. If you could do that, that is the number one option. The Malav, if you can't do that, Rabbi Eliezer Omer Tered v'titma v'al yitme'ena biyad. What you should do is, at least for the truma not going to waste all the wine, you can go and take an impure vessel and collect the wine in there, which is no. Yeah, flow into the flow down to the reservoir, and do not get an impure vessel, and that would be the same as contaminating it. The same way you can't take truma, contaminate it, you can't let it go into a vessel. Rabbi Yeshua Omer af yitme'ena biyad. You're allowed to even contaminate it. You're allowed to even contaminate it to save it. So what do you see from Rabbi Yeshua? He says that you can do a sin by truma, contaminate it by putting it into an impure vessel in order to save the chulin, to save the other wine. So instead of letting it just go into the reservoir and wasting it away, save this. Even though the rest of the wine is going to become impure, it'll become mundane. You could save you could do a sin with truma to save chulin. So what do you see in two areas, truma and chulin? You don't want to have all the wine go to waste in the reservoir, so you can salvage it, even though it's going to become mundane, by sinning with truma. That's like two things. So too the chatas and the ola, you should be able to put up on the altar. It's like sinning with the chatas, salvaging the ola, sinning with the truma, salvaging the mundane. So it says, no, shiny hasam diletuma kaazla. There it's different because the truma is destined to become mundane anyways. Under is a whole vat of mundane truma, of mundane wine. So either way, this wine is going to become mundane no matter what. So that's not really considered like you're sinning with one to salvage totally mundane wine. This wine that you're salvaging is heading in that direction anyways. It's going to become mundane. So it's not totally two separate things. As opposed to the chatas and the ola would be totally two separate things. Salvaging, you're sinning with one sacrifice to salvage the other sacrifice. That's too far apart. Ki asa Rav Yitzchak. When Rav Yitzchak came, presumably from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, Tani, he taught the following teaching. Kiv said, Tzara sheshachtan shalokim mitzvasan, psulin v'tu ubar tzurasan. V'yatzu lebeis hasreifa. When Rav Yitzchak came and he said, Kiv said, Tzara, the lambs of Shavuos, sheshachtan shalokim mitzvasan, you slaughtered it incorrectly for the wrong reasons. They are puzzle. They are invalid. And you have to let them spoil away, lose their form, and then burn them. Take it out to the house of burning. Amar of Nachman, it must be that you, Rav Yitzchak, Amar of Nachman, Mar de Makish Lechatos Tani Psulin. You compare these sacrifices to the Chata sacrifice. And we had on the first Mishnah in Zvachim that that all the offerings slaughtered for the wrong reasons, except for two, you could still continue in your service, except for a chatas and the Korban Pesach. So you must compare these offerings to the chatas offerings, the shlamim to these obligatory shavuos offerings to a chatas offering. So that's why you taught psulin like a chatas. However, Tana debe Levi. But in the academy of Levi, the Gomer Shalmei Chova Mishalmei Nedava, he learns the obligatory festive, peace offerings. He learns it from the voluntary peace offerings. He taught ksherim. He taught they're still going to be kosher. You can still continue in your service. Now, where did Levi teach this? The Tani Levi, as Levi taught, Vishar Shalmei Nazir Sheshachtan Shalokim Mitzvasan, that the Shalmei Nazir, the peace offerings brought at the end of the Nazirus process that were slaughtered for the wrong reasons, you have a day to eat them. They're like a shlamim offering now. And you don't have to bring any bread or any the zroa is the what? The foreleg that you usually would bring with your Nazir. You don't have to bring it. It'll become a regular shlamim. Now 1 second. So what do you see from Levi? Oh, sorry, Levi. Not the first opinion. Yeah, Levi says that you see here, you have an obligatory offering, and yet you started for the wrong reason. You can keep going with your service. It's not going to count as your Nazir offering, but it'll still count. Yeah. So that's because he learns the obligatory peace offerings from the voluntary peace offerings, and therefore it's going to be permitted. Now, Meisvei Asham ben Shana. We have a problem with this. Asham ben Shana vehevi ben Shtayim. You have a guilt offering that was 1 year old, and you brought it when it was 2 years old, or the other way around. It's supposed to be brought when it's 2 years old, and you brought it when it's 1 year old. Ben Shtayim vehevi ben Shana. Psulim, it's invalid. And what do you do? But to Uber to Rasan, let its form be removed, meaning let it spoil and lose its form. V'yatu lebesa sreifa, and then go burn it. However, that's an asham. Aval olas nazir, the ola offering of a nazir, the olas yoletus, and the ola of a lady who gave birth, the olas mitzora, and the ola of a mitzora. Shahayu b'nei shteish, never 2 years. The offering was within 2 years old, or it was 2 years old. V'shachtan ksherim, but those that you slaughter are going to be kosher, even though they're supposed to be less than 2 years old. So, what's the rule of thumb? Klalo shel davar, kol hakasher ba'olas nedava, anything which is valid as a voluntary ola offering, kasher ba'olas chova, is going to be kasher for an olas chova. V'kol hapasul b'chatos, but anything which is invalid by a chatos is pasul ba'asham, is going to be invalid for an asham. Chut mishalo lishman, mishalo lishmo, except for a chatos that was brought for the wrong intent, that's going to be totally invalid. Okay, so what do you see here? That earlier we said the opinion of Rav Yitzchak, who said that he learns an obligatory ola from a voluntary ola. Now, so this brisa is a difficulty to the opinion of Rav Yitzchak. 1 second. Right, who learns the olas chova from the olas nedava. Now, in this brisa, 1 second. Sorry, the opposite. In this brisa, we learn explicitly the olas chova from the olas nedava. We learn a obligatory ola offering from a voluntary one. Earlier, according to Rav Yitzchak, he said, according to who did he say it? According to the first opinion, right? He said that an obligatory offering is going to be invalid, and you have to let it go and let it burn. That's what Rav Yitzchak taught. But here we have obligatory offerings, like the obligatory ola offering, that is learned down from the voluntary ola offering, that even if you mess up on the ola, you could still use it. So Rav Yitzchak said, though, by the Shavuos offering, if you mess up, that's an obligatory offering. We don't learn from a voluntary offering, and therefore it just has to get ruined. But here we have an obligatory ola offering, and we do learn from a voluntary offering, and you can keep bringing it. So on that we say, Tana debe Levi, who this brisa is the opinion of Levi. Yes, Levi earlier argued on Rav Yitzchak. So earlier Rav Yitzchak argued on Levi. Now we brought a brisa that argues on Rav Yitzchak. We're saying yes, but that brisa is his old competitor. That brisa is Levi. So therefore, yes, they argue in two places. You're right. An obligatory offering by a shlamim, by Shavuos, or by an ola, they're going to be consistent. According to Rav Yitzchak, if you mess up, you got to burn it. And according to Tana Dvei Levi, you can still use it. But that's not such a question. That's not a question for us. Okay. Fine. Now, Tashma, the brisa says, the Tani Levi, the brisa says in the name of Levi, that in Asham Nazir, a guilt offering of a Nazir, or of a Mitzorah, of Asham Mitzorah, Shishachtan, Shelo Lishman, that are slaughtered for the wrong reasons, are still ksherim. They're still valid offerings, just vilo alu lebailim, l'shem chova. They're not going to count as your obligatory Nazir offering, as your obligatory Mitzorah offering. Now, shachtan mechusar zman, if you slaughtered it in the mechusar zman bebailim, let's say you slaughtered it before the 7 days of purity are up for a Mitzorah, or shahayu b'nei shtei shanim, or they were 2 years old, the shachtan, and you saw them psulin. Oh, I can hear myself. So and they're slaughtered, they are invalid. Now says the Gemara, that's what Levi taught. So says the Gemara, im isa, if it's really true that Levi learns obligatory offerings from voluntary offerings, so why are these offerings invalid? V'im isa ligmar mishlamim. Learn from a shlamim. The same by a shlamim, you validated it. These should also be valid. Says the Gemara, no. Shlamim mishlamim gamar. You can learn shlamim from shlamim, an obligatory shlamim from a voluntary shlamim. Asham mishlamim lo gamar. But in asham mitzora, these offerings, that you can't learn from a shlamim. Now, v'igamar shlamim mishlamim, ligmar nami asham yasham. Okay, but if you're learning shlamim from shlamim, obligatory shlamim from a voluntary shlamim, you should also learn obligatory asham from a voluntary asham. Ligmar nami asham yasham. So, not really voluntary, but as follows: asham nazir, asham mitzora. Learn an asham nazir that's slaughtered, let's say before the time is up, and asham mitzora, which we just said are totally invalid. Learn it from an asham gezelos or an asham meilos, or the other way. Oh, asham gezelos, asham meilos, asham nazir, asham mitzora. Why don't you do the same thing they do by the shlamims? Learn them all from each other. Learn the same thing over here. Learn these from each other. So that we say, Amar Rav Simon bar Ashi, no. Done in davar shelo behekshero, midavar shelo behekshero. We learn something which is not valid from something which is not valid. For example, let's say a voluntary shlamim offering that came incorrectly for the wrong reason. That we can learn. However, we don't learn something the ain done davar shelo behekshero, like an asham nazir that's 2 years old. You can't learn an asham nazir which is invalid if it's 2 years old. Just say, oh, it should be like a different asham which is valid when it's 2 years old. That's not going to work. So if your offering is invalid because it's the wrong age, you can't say, let it be another offering that's the right age. But if your offering is something which is, you had the wrong intention and that's it, okay, so if you had the wrong intention though, you can apply the blood now and it'll count as a different offering. So that's much less of a jump. Yeah. Okay, let's stop here.